Good afternoon and welcome back to Gulfstream Park. Thank you for joining us here on this lovely Friday card on Gulfstream today. I'm Gabby Gaudette, joined by Andy Serling, here to really tackle this 10-race card.
On your birthday, no less. Everybody knows it's your birthday, so we can discuss it, right?
It's all over
It's all
Twitter.
over Twitter and the internet and Facebook.
I feel very special today.
You should feel very special, and everybody did something really nice for you except for me.
Well,
in fact, I did something nasty. I told everybody on the show it's your birthday.
it's my birthday all day, so you still have time.
Okay, I'll keep that in
Got
mind.
wine and cheese, though, and that's probably the highlight of my day.
I plan to do some whining. I don't know if we'll be drinking any wine, but I'm definitely going to wine at some point.
I plan on doing some cheesing as well, because I'm going to make some bets today. I think it's actually a really interesting card, even though we're off the turf onto the main track.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can find some ideas. I mean, sometimes it works out very well. You've got to keep your eyes open. The second race, though, today is a particularly amusing one because there is no form. But, you know, you make the best of the situation, and things will pop up. Bad favorites and interesting horses that'll be bigger prices than they should be.
Absolutely. We'll take a look at our featured wagers today and some of our carryovers. We have one carryover, and once again, no super high five wagering in races 1, 2, 3, 4, and 10. So the super high five does start in today's fifth race, so something to definitely take note of. But the early pick five does start in race 1, and as we move along later on the afternoon, race 5 kicks off the 20-cent Rainbow Pick 6. We'll throw that slate up here, over $88,000 in that carryover. Continues to grow, and as we get into race 6, does kick off the 50-cent late pick 5 as well. And once again, off the turf on the main track. Main track is currently listed as sloppy.
Yeah, we've certainly gotten our share of rain, but it's supposed to be nice throughout the weekend. I know there's a little rain scheduled sometime early to middle of next week, but after that, all things look good. So we're due for some good weather, and at least with the rain, the turf courses will be kept a little fairer, and they're not getting super, super firm. I have a pick 5 ticket to start it out. It does not involve the horse that's currently 1-9. I have a feeling there's not too much money in the pool at this point because I'm not exactly sure why they're betting on the 6 in excessiveness. I use the 3, 7, 8 to start it out. We'll talk about that race. 5, 7, 6, 7, 1, 6, 11, and 10, 12, 13, and sort of use it as a guide to try to get through this. And I'm probably going to play that ticket. I think it looks like a reasonable idea to get through it.
All right, we'll start it off with race 1, a 6,250 non-winners, a 2 lifetime conditions, 7 furlongs on the main track, the sloppy track. And I initially had the 1 and the 5 in here. So unfortunately with those 2 scratches, got to go back to the drawing board. I couldn't take the 3 Crazy Frank C. This horse could easily win, but I just thought he was coming out of slower races, first off the claim. Also, Michael Petro, he really doesn't mess around with those low-level claimers. So can the new connections really improve this horse?
I can't argue with any of that. The trainer obviously has a lower percentage. The one thing about Crazy Frank C is this is a horse that may have been on a rail that wasn't the place to be last time out. So that's why I used him. And we both got him second. I'm not thrilled with either, but the rail moved him up for me. You've picked a horse in top that I didn't have anywhere in there. I'm curious.
This is a long time maiden, and I honestly did go back to the drawing board with this race. His lone off-the-track type of race was actually on a sloppy sealed track back way, way long ago, or actually earlier in 2015. But he went against the likes of Materiality, against Maiden Special Weight Company, and yes, he's had his fair share of tries. But I actually kind of like the added distance for him. I just don't really like that inside post position. I'm trying to get kind of a flyer in here, just thinking that it was a bad performance against much tougher on a sloppy track.
Listen, I'm not knocking price horses in races like this. I'm trying the 7. I believe I can. I know it's been claimed from Joe Sharp, but thought maybe 7 would be a little bit better than a mile for this horse. Listen, I didn't have a major excuse for his last race. I just think he might be in a much easier spot. And the 3 and 7, from a speed figure standpoint, they seem to be generally just faster horses than the other horses. And that's really why I went to them. They're the logical horse in here. I'm a little worried that the 8-horse Wall Street Kitten could get loose theoretically with an aggressive ride, because the one thing about this horse is the race 4 back, when he got loose, would beat this field. The last 3 races, obviously, will give him no chance whatsoever. But I think the best move they could make with him was to be aggressive and try to get him clear, because that's the only chance I think he has to win. Whether or not A, he can do that, and B, he'll still win is another story.
I actually kind of liked him too. I didn't use him in the top 3, but I was debating on using him. These races are kind of tricky, but I think another feather in the cap is that it's second off the layoff and he cuts back to 7 furlongs. At least he's a horse that kind of likes this interesting distance. So he's a horse to definitely use if they're aggressive. from that outside, and probably, we'll see, the outside's probably the place to be on this track.
Well, we'll see. That's a good thing to bring up because when we've had moisture in the track, it's mostly been an outside-y track. Doesn't mean it's always going to be the case, though, and you have to play these races by, you don't want to go in with some preconceived notion, and you also don't want to just assume the rail is off because guys stay away from it. We got that situation, I think, on Sunday's card because the rail hadn't been good, and it turned out the rail was fine.
Yeah, people were closing from off the pace on the rail. It was actually quite decent, and the track had still a little bit of moisture in there as well. We'll move along to race 2 on the card, a maiden $25,000 event. Originally on the turf, will run on the main track at 1 1/16. Have a couple of scratches in here, and I land on the 7 Little Gianna. Carlo Vaccarezza decides to keep this filly in. She's by Super Saver out of a His Majesty mare. The mare was actually a nice allowance, as kind of a stakes-placed mare and a 4-time winner on the dirt. So I even found interesting dirt breeding, and they keep her in. So I kind of like her today.
Yeah, I'm going to use her as well. I think she seems like a horse to use. It's a very, very difficult race because there's no form to go on. I mean, ultimately, I didn't want to use my Sangria, the 2-horse, because the dirt races are completely atrocious. I don't know what to do with the 4 Aisha Rock, but a sort of much more turf pedigree, a first foal with a good turf second family. The 5-horse Virgin Morena, I mean, her last 2 races are absolutely atrocious. On the other hand, she has that race in the stake race 3 back, where if she runs that race, she's a very, very likely winner. So you've got to use her. And then you go to horses like the 8 and 9 in here, and I guess the 8 isn't impossible. Didn't run horrendously compared to these, and that's why it's my 3rd choice. There's just not a lot to go on, but horses like the 2, 4, and 9 are tough to take, at least for me, on the dirt.
They are very tough, but we have seen at least one time throughout this meet, Jessica Campitelli horse kind of be lone speed on the off-track, staying in on an originally carded turf race. And I'm just thinking this might be the best attribute for this horse. Draws the inside, clears early, or at least shows a lot of speed.
She's supposed to be clear on the lead, I agree.
Yeah, it finds a good place kind of in a few strides off the rail. So she makes a little bit of sense, but honestly, I kind of like the main track breeding more so with the 7 Little Gianna.
No, but I think that's a very good point about the 2 My Sangria, because obviously these horses could be much different if they get loose, especially on a wet track, and if the rider's smart enough to take the horse off the inside.
We'll take a look at race 3, 16,000 non-winners, a 2 lifetime condition, 1 1/16 on the main track. And we actually had a main track only entrant draw in here as well. And this was one of the interesting races. I thought I could have gone at least in between 2 or 3 horses.
Yeah, the problem with the horse that you and I land on is that the horse is 1 for 21. The good news about it is it's only the 2nd time this horse has been on the dirt. And arguably that race at Gulfstream last year on the dirt, albeit a dry dirt track, but at least a scheduled dirt race, would make him, he runs back to that race. He's probably going to win this race, but he is a little bit unreliable.
I agree, and he's never been on an off track before. He has been on a main track that has been fast, but there was a good 2nd place finish behind a horse who has actually been in very good form on the main track as of late. Grivon. Past him, though, I do kind of like the 7 Gym 2, a horse that you use in the exacta for Joe Orsino. I went back and watched this race at Aqueduct on the muddy sealed track, and quite frankly, this horse was about 4 wide, and it looked like he was kind of the beneficiary of just having a really good position on the main track. I don't know if he really liked the track, though.
Well, that's the other thing is, and you're talking about the race on November 12th for Gym 2, is that Providence Cat won the race at a big price. It was actually a horse that I had liked in there because he had very good races that were kind of dirtied up. He was a horse that was a classic example of finding a horse with back form that was well off the PPs on a wet track. So it was actually a very good effort relative to the field. The problem is a muddy track at Aqueduct and a sloppy track at Gulfstream, they're just 2 completely different surfaces. And just because he handled that one doesn't mean that he's going to like the moisture of the track today. On the other hand, he's a tough horse not to use, but I worry a little bit that both the 6 and 7 have speed and they could hurt each other's chances. That's something that concerns me.
That's a good concern to have. The 8 Dancing in the Heat is a horse that should be closing from off the pace at this 2-turn distance today and hasn't been in horrible form in the past couple of starts. Quite frankly, has been facing tougher in the past 2. He's a primarily a dirt horse. Some of his better races come on the dirt. And you go back to his sloppy sealed performance, and it almost looked like he loved the slop. He was beaten by a length, but he made the lead a little bit prematurely, and he just couldn't finish strongly. But he closed. He was running a hole through the wind at one point, and I almost think that if he does get a little bit of pace to run behind, he could rally from off the pace.
I think that's a very insightful pick, actually. That's a horse that's worth using, and a horse I would consider, if I did it over again, putting into my pick fives. And that's one of the reasons you play multiple tickets, because that is a horse I want to have as a backup somewhere. It's a good point.
Okay, and that's race 3. We'll move on to race 4. 30,000 non-winners to 2 lifetime condition. 1 mile and an 1/8 onto the main track as well. Have a few scratches. And looking at the field as well, it looks like we should have a decent amount of speed, especially with the likes of the 6 Summer Morn in here.
Yeah, I thought that Summer Morn was going to be loose in this race. I'm not going to bet Summer Morn particularly. I'm going to use the horse in my pick fives, but that horse is supposed to be loose in here. I think stamina has been an issue for that horse getting 1 mile and an 1/8.
Yeah, stretching out last time out, did go the mile, but did come out of kind of a tough race. Now the blinkers do come off, or do go on, excuse me. Comes out of the race behind Montige, who we saw come back to run a 97 by her speed figure behind Amy's Flatter. So maybe this horse could have the advantage on class alone.
Yeah, no, listen, he has to be used in this race, and he's supposed to be able to handle the distance. Whether or not he does remains to be seen. Now, I don't think that Bird Humor is going to be that far out of it. You know, Nick and Joelle, and keep in mind, the horse now has post 6, so even though it's the 11, not going to be badly compromised by the post. And I just think this is a super logical horse to be sitting in a good spot, and I picked him 3rd because I want to bet the 1 in here, but I think the 11's kind of the horse to beat.
Yeah, I love this horse today, actually. It took a long time for him to break his maiden, but I like the fact that off of that maiden score, they gave him a bit of a freshening, and coming back against reasonable company. This isn't a tremendously tough field, especially now that we're off the turf onto the main track. And it also looks like a horse who, even though a long-time maiden, he's improved with distance. So finally they keep him going a route of ground. His only off-track performance was against maiden special weight behind Frosted, so I think that's a forgivable race.
And as I look at the race, I'm trying to figure out exactly why I have the 1 over both the 6 and 11 in this race, and I'm a little bit mystified, to be honest. He did lose the 11 in his races. Maybe I just feel like he's a horse that broke through, albeit with a good setup last time out in the turf and a much weaker field. He does have races fast enough to win, especially at the 1 mile and 1/8, and maybe he's a little more reliable at the distance. I want all the 1, 6, and 11. I don't have any great preference.
It's tough. We also have the 4 Soul Man, though, and we have seen a couple of Grand Motion runners, although he hasn't won a race so far at the meet. A couple of the Grand Motion runners coming off significant layoffs have actually been running very well, including yesterday a nice turf performance too.
Well, I think it's something that you and I had talked about a few weeks ago, which was it may have been taking his horses a little more time to acclimate to being down here. And now his horses have been here for closing in on 2 months, and they're probably much better acclimated and running better. The thing about Soul Man is, on the surface of things, you look at him and you say he's a turf horse, but the truth is he improved on the turf, but not that significantly that you couldn't make the argument that his dirt efforts aren't that bad, and he might just be an improved horse since he ran those races.
And this is not a bad spot to bring him back off the little freshening as well. When he was on the main track, it was off-track performances, but he finished just a few lengths behind Divining Rod, who obviously went on to run in the Preakness. So there's a little bit of class there on the main track.
I like Divining Rod, actually. It's a pretty good. That was a Leal horse, right?
Yeah, Arnaud Delacour.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad horse. He got hurt, I think, after he won the Lexington, right? And I think he got hurt after that race. See if he comes back.
All right, and with that said, that's races 1 through 4. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the 20-cent Rainbow Pick 6. We have a carryover over $88,000 right after this. Welcome back to Gulfstream today, and taking a look at the Pick 6, but do want to take a second to remind everybody that race 5 does start the Super High 5, so there will be no Super High 5 wagering in races 1 through 4 or in the 10th race. So race 5 kicks off the Super High 5 and the Pick 6. We'll take a look at the ticket that I did construct, $43.20, so relatively cheap. When there's crazy cards like this, I like to play a ticket that's under $50. We have 3 horses to kick us off, 3 horses in race 6, 2 in race 7, 4 in race 8. I'm keying off of the 5 in race 9 and using 3 horses to round us off in race 10. I could have used the 1 in race 9 again, but sometimes you just have to take an opinion and follow through. He seems like the horse to beat with speed. So we'll go through the sequence, Andy, and we kick it off with race 5, an open $16,000 claimer.
I'm a little confused. I thought you liked the 10 a little bit in this race. Didn't we talk about this race? You're not a big fan of the 10 here, Double Berg? There was some confusion in our discussions. I see you've left him out.
No, I liked the 12.
The 12, JL's Princess.
Yeah.
Aren't you worried that Double Berg might like a wet track and, improve for these connections after getting that horrendous ride last time out?
Yes, that's a chance I'm going to have to take.
All right. Listen, I just want you to hit the Rainbow 6 on your birthday. I think that's only appropriate.
Okay, well, how about we'll throw the 10 in then, right?
Yeah, I think you want to throw the 10 in. I think you need to use the 10 in here. But let's talk about the 12 we both picked on top.
Okay, the 12, JL's Princess. David Casson brings this horse out, and I honestly thought that she'll get the pace that she kind of wants, and you go back to her her most recent off-the-track performance on a sloppy sealed going, and yes, it was against a 5-horse field. She drew away from the field. She really had everything go her way. But I like her for that point alone. I thought she faced a good field, although a small field, and visually it looked like she was really taking to the track. That was at Gulfstream Park West. Can't you transition it to Gulfstream, though?
No, I agree. And I thought that effort was good, and that's why I liked her. And here, with Reckless Move, who will probably be a shorter price because of the big win last time out, and she could clearly win this race. This is a much tougher off-the-turf field than the one that she beat here about exactly a week ago, and that was a terrible field. There are horses in this race that can run.
I agree with you, and I do respect her, obviously, especially in the Pick 6, because she's proven that she likes an off-track, she likes this distance, and she likes Gulfstream, so there's a lot of feathers in her cap as well. I agree, though. I think this is a much tougher field, although she does draw a good outside post. We also have the likes of the 14, Miss Deja Vu, who draws in as a main track-only entrant for Peter Walder. First off, the claim for Peter Walder. Now, my main concern with this filly is the distance. She does look like a through-and-through sprinter. We still stay the one-turn mile. Off the turf, though, Peter Walder, and I found a recent stat. Obviously, we don't have a slate for it, but off the turf races, this is kind of Peter Walder's MO, and out of 17 horses over the past few years, he wins at a 41% clip. Positive ROI still. So I think this is a dangerous horse to leave out of the Pick 6.
Yeah, I hear you. He's got speed. She has speed. I could see using her as well. She's not in my top 3, but I'm not going to eliminate her off the claim for Peter Walder, especially.
All right, maybe I should throw in the 10 Double Berg there in the first leg of the sequence.
I don't want you to be rooting too hard against me.
I never root against you. You know that.
I know you don't.
We'll move on to the 6th.
On your birthday, you might.
I might.
I'll let you do it once.
Especially if I have money invested.
If you have money invested, you can definitely root against me.
We'll take a look at the 6th race on the card as 6,259 winners of 3 lifetime conditions, 6 furlongs on the main track, and this does kick off the late Pick 5. I believe you came up with a little ticket.
I do have a ticket. I'm going to go 4-8 to start it out. I'm going to single the favored 7 the next, and I'm going to spread out in the last 3 legs. I'll go light. Hopefully we can manage to get through the first 2, and then we'll have ourselves 36 combinations after that. And I'm hoping in this race that the 8 is the speed outside of the 6 Duncan Bend, who I'm not a particular fan of. The thing also I liked a little bit about the 8 Acapulquito is that the horse has had some time off since the last race, and I just felt like a little bit of rest might help this horse a little bit, as opposed to some of the horses in here that have been running more frequently.
That's a very good point. He did have quite a tumultuous campaign there over the past couple of months, running several times each month, so maybe the break will do him well, and he does draw that good outside post. I kind of overlooked him, but you do make some very fair cases on him. The 4 El Kraken, and the 10-pound apprentice is back aboard today. We were both paying close attention to this last race, and I thought it was a very gutsy move for him to kind of bully his way in between the rail and another horse last time out. However, the only bad thing about that move was that it was on a day that the rail probably wasn't the best place to be.
A little bit questionable, I agree, but what concerns me is that he's going to do it again. One of the main reasons that apprentices are often on the rail, and to their detriment, is that the people who ride them are people that use the sheets because they believe very much in weight. They also believe in saving ground. So they tell them to stay inside, and I've seen way too many apprentices, and they're just following instructions, and they're bad instructions, that they'll stay on the rail to their detriment. They'll get blocked. They'll try to do what he did. And also, if the rail's not the place to be, you really don't want to be on it. And that's a problem that one of the problems I have with the sheets in general is there are times that they think saving ground is good, is a good thing to do, when in fact it's the wrong place to be. So I hope on today's race that somebody tells this rider, who may be a talented rider who did very little wrong, that this is not the day to glue yourself to the rail, because if he does it, it may well be to his detriment, and a horse could easily win.
And looking at the 7, the Judge Chuckles, this is another horse who we both use. Has a win on the off track, has been facing a similar company. It looks like a horse that kind of fits, super seamy, ran a hole through the wind, going gate to wire, and he's not really running into a bear like that today.
And he's got a good, cool name, too.
The Judge Chuckles.
It's kind of a cool name.
It is fun. We'll move on to the 7th
It's not why
race.
I used it, though.
At 12,500. Sometimes that works, actually, on
Really?
days like this.
Keep that in mind.
Race 7.
Might work in the second race. Is there any names I really like in there?
We'll go back and take a look. A maiden 12,500 event, a mile and a 16th on the main track. Scratch 5 in here, excuse me. And we do have the likes of the 7, Live by the River for Jane Sabelli, and the 2, John's Girl. These two look like the horses to beat. I tried to take a shot, but they do look like the horses to beat.
Yeah, I mean, Don's Girl obviously can win, but it's a mile and a 16th around 2 turns today. And listen, the last race is the best race horses ever run. It's also an 0 for 11, but certainly dangerous. I'm just going to single some. I'm going to try to get through this race by just using the 7 in here, a horse that raced against considerably better horses, dropping down, taking appropriate drop for a very live trainer in Jane Sabelli. It's nothing you don't know. You've got a trainer stat, I noticed. It's kind of interesting on a horse that on paper has no chance.
No chance, but
just got a race.
Who knows? Second off the layoff, now dropping down for maiden 25. A very potent stat. I love these. You hate these. Trainer Sid Attard actually sprints to routes on the dirt with maidens at Gulfstream in the past year. 100% a positive ROI.
Here's my problem with that stat. These are 8 to 5 shots. That's my listen. That's why. Listen, it's a long shot, and I will root for you on this horse against my pick 5 in my heart. I like the fact you're taking a shot with a big price and trying to be creative. I'd feel better about that stat if it was 3 for 7 and the ROI was $23.
I
and
understand.
2 of the horses paid big prices because they were all horses that were supposed to win. And they did win.
I understand. But I couldn't take the 2 stretching out to 2 turns. The 7, Live by the River, is clearly the horse to beat. But quite frankly, this filly, it was a subpar performance last time out. I don't have a strong case.
She's no bargain. She's no bargain. I got no problem. I mean, the truth is, if the 2 wasn't an over type, the 2's the horse to beat off the last race. There's no question about it. It's going to be the inside speed. So the 7 doesn't have to win.
I do worry about her, though, going that distance. With that said, we'll move on to the 8th race, and hopefully your single can get home, because that would actually mean that I would still be live in the pick 6 as well. But we'll move on to
Isn't all this love really wonderful? It's really such a touching thing, isn't it?
We're such good co-workers.
We actually hate each other.
Race 8 on the card, an allowance optional claiming event, 6 furlongs on the main track, and an interesting race here. I thought this race was even more tricky now, all considering the track conditions.
Yeah, well, I want to go back, and you got to talk about Blame Jim to start this race out. And the interesting thing is these horses have not been winning for Todd. These horses that were good, that are coming back, in general, they're not getting it done at this meet, and frequently they do. We're going to look at Blame Jim's race from June 26th at Belmont Park. This race was beyond outstanding. Blame Jim survived a monstrous duel in here and lost to a very good horse in Noble Cornerstone, who got a perfect trip and setup. And this was a performance that made him look like he was going to be a factor in races like the Amsterdam and King's Bishop at Saratoga. Yet oddly, Todd chose to go to the Jersey Shore and not the Amsterdam, and it kind of was a bad sign. The horse was horrendous at Monmouth and then terrible in an allowance race at Saratoga. Having said that, dueled with Waco, who loves Saratoga and is very fast. I can't say that Blame Jim doesn't like a wet track just because he ran poorly at the Gotham, because he got involved in a very fast pace, and he was going 2 turns. He's not a 2-turn horse. He can win this race, but man, he is a very tough horse to trust.
He's a tough horse to take. You know, some of his workouts coming off the layoff have been good. You can make excuses against much tougher company for this horse in the past. And he's a horse you have to respect and you have to use, because even though you're not fully trusting in him, these are the horses of Todd Pletcher's that show up and run big.
They do, but at this meet lately, they haven't been. You know,
the
ones that
couple
have
of
gotten
weeks.
older,
Yes.
it just feels like he's bringing back horses that were okay, and they're not running to their races. And I think the horse that you and I both like, you've got a stat for City of Weston. I just think this is a horse that's turning back in distance and finally getting into a more realistic spot. He's in the right spot today, and he's supposed to sit a good trip.
I agree with you, Peter Walder, and just past couple of years, the dirt third after the layoff, going a route of ground, cutting back to sprints. Again, small here, but a pretty good statistic and a positive ROI. You go back and look at some of the races that he's run against others, including the one Trev. He's obviously run against him in the past. Looking at the pace scenario as well, Trev has been capable of really getting on the lead by himself in the past. Dreaming of Nino might be the second fastest horse in the race, perhaps. And today, Paco Lopez is aboard, and I almost wonder if they're going to get really aggressive and give Trev a little bit of company on the front end.
Oh, I don't think the Trev's the speed. I think the 3 and 4 are faster horse than Trev. We'll see if it works out. Here's the problem with Trev. Trev's form has eluded him since he left Kirk Said's barn, and he's been in some very, very good barns since then, and he's just not running well at all, and that bothers me a lot about him. And I wonder if he'll have that same kind of speed even in that kind of form.
Now we have a quick thought of the 2, Rod McLeod here for Dale Romans. I didn't like this horse whatsoever. I didn't throw him in my top couple of selections. He went gate to wire, 90 Beyer speed figure on a sloppy sealed track against first level allowance horses at Churchill. Could this be the horse that kind of kicks us out?
No.
Okay.
No, he's not. Rod McLeod. So I think the other Dale Romans horse, Sev, is the one that could knock people out.
All right. Well, I just wanted to pose that question for you.
I felt like I should answer it honestly.
Good. Thank you.
Was that cheering because people heard it was your birthday? Was that like a
I think
pre-celebration?
the cheer, no, because they like City of Weston too. I think that's what it is. Said yes.
Yeah.
We like that
we
horse.
both liked them. They like somebody else. We're very excited we both like City of Weston.
I heard a lot of cheering. We'll find out what that is in a second.
Well, Dennis is on top of it.
With that said, we'll go on to the 9th race. First half of the late daily double, maiden $50,000 race. 7 furlongs on the main track. Scratch the 8, Mr. Josh win here. And I singled on the 5, Orsono. I know I do like the 1, Howling Mad Smith. This horse kind of scares me.
Let's look at Orsono's last race where he finished second and he was well ahead of JB Quick. Orsono was the 1 horse in this race. I thought this horse ran fine. And listen, he's much the horse to beat in this race. And did you single him in your pick 6? And I understand that. I have nothing against this horse. I just felt like taking a shot with another horse, a horse that you've picked second. But this was a good effort. The only reason I would say that that I might try to beat him was they had him ready to go first time, and even though he ran well, he didn't get it done. And sometimes these horses come back and don't run as well. But he's had a month since that last race, 5 weeks actually. Yeah,
and I guess another negative that you could pose was they debuted him at not the maiden claiming level, but it took them a long time a lot of the time we see Ralph Nix debut horses in their 2-year-old season. It took him a long time to get to the races late in his 3-year-old season. Now he's 4 with only 1 race. But again, there are a couple of negatives. I just thought he was probably the fastest horse in the race, and he's coming in off of a good effort. The 1, Howling Mad Smith, though, comes out of a very strong race at Belmont last time out.
Yeah, he does. And he comes out of a super tough race. Marking, who unfortunately they're saying Dubai. I don't know why they wouldn't want to try to run him in the Don, because he's a very good horse, finishing second the Malibu. I want to give him a shot. We've got some good numbers for Nick. His numbers second-time starters are not good, going maiden special and maiden claimer. But overall, as you can see with the trainer stat, he's got very good numbers, maiden special and maiden claimer. And he's the best alternative that can come up. I'd rather take him than High Dandy, the 2, who I also could use on a big ticket. And I'll just take a shot with the 1, but I'm not against the 5.
All right, sounds good with that. The 2, High Dandy, and I opted for the 4, JB Quick in there, who has kind of just been running competitively, following the rest of the horses home, but he very well could turn the tables on a different course today. We'll take a look at the 10th and final race, a 16,000 conditional claimer, and 5 furlongs onto the main track. And I thought this was an interesting race. Now, we have the 13 Super Simi, who's obviously entered for main track only. This horse has been running high buyer speed figures on the turf, on the dirt, but first off the claim and off of the George Navarro barn.
I couldn't go against this horse in the dirt. I just thought his last couple races were superior to the other efforts, and he's a true dirt horse. But he could lose. He was 1-5 in a terrible field last time out, so he's sort of in a non-competitive race last time out. And there are horses coming off of decent efforts, but they're off the turf races as opposed to the 13, who's come out of at least dirt races.
I just thought that was such an easy field. I remember you and I handicapping the race and thinking to ourselves, if any other horse wins this race, I might walk off the set.
I agree. That was a preposterous. It wasn't even a race he was in. He was basically in a public workout, and he's not in one today. And listen, I have no knock on the 7 we've got on top. I've got the horse second. It's very much in my pick 5 play.
I thought that was a good race that he comes out of, that $25,000 claimer. I know he was beaten considerably, but he did have a little bit of trouble at the half-mile pole. Galler Donato, this is a horse that I actually didn't use next out, but he wound up beating me in that event. He actually was a visually impressive winner for the level. He's a horse that does figure. I think he has a little bit of natural speed at this distance.
No, I've got no argument with him. I think he makes a lot of sense, and I'm never going to knock somebody for taking a shot against a heavy favorite in a situation like this, because one thing when you take a shot against MTOs is the MTOs just sort of, by their very nature, are always going to be overbet. I mean, not that this 13 and not that you're saying he isn't the horse to beat, but so what? Everybody knows he's the horse to beat. You don't need us to tell you that.
You have the 9 Swagger. I thought of using this horse as well. He finished second behind Pax Orbis, who was a considerable class dropper for Ralph Nix, I believe, that day. So he very well could be competitive.
I agree. I think there's a big gap between the 7 and 13. I considered just using the 7 and 13 to close out the pick 5, and they would be my main A's if I was trying to get other horses onto the tickets.
Okay, and that is races 1 through 10. Once again, want to remind you that races 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 10, no super high 5 wagering, so that does start in race 5 as well as the pick 6. And we do have a carryover of over $88,000. Once again, thank you for joining us here on Gulfstream today. We're going to take a breather, but Larry Comas will be up shortly with all those scratches and changes right after this.